do subscribe to Books on Toast, because if you don't, literature might just die.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a very special episode on the Books on Toast channel. This is our final day of interviews at the Jaipur Lit Festival. I don't know how they called us, but they did, and now they're having to suffer through us, including some of our innumerable authors who sat on this chair and really humored us. So today we have the celebrated author Mary Beard joining us. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Sharin.
I'm Vivek. Hello.
Hello. And welcome to JLF. Thank you so much, Mary.
It's great to be here.
My first question to you is, of course, about your new book, Women in Power. It's such a strong and relevant book in our lifetime and in our times currently, especially in the Me Too era, in the post-Me Too era, and during the Me Too era, rather. So my question to you really is, why did you feel the need to call it a manifesto as a subtitle?
Because I thought that it was actually, in a roundabout way, offering some proposals for change. Now, I think manifestos usually end with, so these are the 5 things we need to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is not what my book does. But I thought that if you just kind of looked at it as an academic analysis or a reflection, you'd miss the point, because embedded in it are ideas about how people can act differently, how they might change things, and they're rather more tentative, I think, than what you'd often expect from a very positive manifesto. But I think, nevertheless, they're more than just thoughts. They're engagements with modern politics and modern political action.
So I have another one for you. You've said in your preface, and I'm just quoting you, and the book, is that how deeply embedded in Western culture are the mechanisms that silence women that refuse to take them seriously. And in the first lecture in the book, because it consists of 2 lectures, you go on to talk about this topic. You stem it from there.
Yeah.
So, we are also at a moment where women's voices are being heard. In number, it's growing, it's increasing. At the same time, ironically, it's also being silenced.
Yeah.
Given the technology, given social media has such a big role to play also in that. So I just wanted to ask you that, is this change a vast, as in a sea change that's happening right now? Do you think it's just a touch and go kind of situation?
I'd like to think it was a sea change, and we won't know whether it was a sea change, till for another 50 years, long after I'm dead. So I won't live to see the answer to that question. And I have 2 different ways of thinking about it. One is that things will never be the same. That women have years spoken out, and they've outed what men have been doing, and this will make a difference. And I think it will make a difference, but I'm not sure necessarily that it'll make as big a difference as we imagine. And I partly think that because if you go back the almost 3 millennia that my book covers, women have always somehow been allowed to speak out against the wrongs done to them. The rape victims of antiquity spoke. They spoke their pain. But it didn't make a blind bit of difference to the political system. And I think if you just take Hollywood, and Hollywood isn't the be-all and end of this, of course, but if you just take Hollywood, of course the female actors have been brave to speak out against the structures of power. But if you want if you want things to change, you've got to change the structure of power. The fact that these guys could get away with it for so long was because the power of Hollywood is vested in them, and it still is. And if you look at the percentage of women directors in Hollywood, it's tiny. And so I think, I admire the women that speak out, but there's more, it takes more than just speaking out to kind of turn a hashtag into a real revolution. I hope it will be turned into it.
What do you think, in your opinion, would be those elements required to change something like a bubbling of a revolution into a real, a reckoning of a change, rather?
I don't think it's really about successful prosecutions, because I suspect there won't be very many.
Of course not.
It's about saying, how are we going to run this industry, in the case of Hollywood, in such a way that women have a fair share of it? And that does mean some of those old white men giving up a bit of their Hollywood power. Now, I think that some of them, probably, I hope, will see that there's an advantage for them in doing that too. We don't want, actually, people don't want to live in a world in which women are pushed into the shower and held up against the wall by some powerful film mogul. I mean, even the powerful film moguls, I suspect, don't think that's the way they want the world to be, although they've learned to justify it to themselves. Certainly, the rest of us don't want it to be like that, but we've got to see that it takes a bigger structural change than just women's ability to say stop it. I mean, saying stop it is a jolly good start. I'm not in any way denying that. But there's more to be done.
There has been a reckoning of a sea of Me Too movements and accounts that have also empowered women in India, for instance. Over the last few months, we've seen a lot of women speak out and have the courage to vocalize all the issues that they've also had. But there's also a trial by Twitter, which, leads to some unverified calling outs and, especially with a lot of anonymous accounts, you can never really tell. So do you think that there is more than any other time now, especially when there is a better need to want to verify these things, because it's an undoing of its own self, What do you think should young people especially look to, cleanse their timelines to see, how they can do this better?
It's very hard to know, because actually, in the great scheme of things, this is a very recent phenomenon, and we haven't learned how to handle it. It's not that we've been particularly bad, it's just we're very inexperienced. And, okay, there are some people now brought up as, quotes, digital natives, but most of us weren't. And, I suppose, to be reasonably optimistic, I think that over the next 10 to 20 years, we'll probably, together we will start to work this out. And I think there's a trade-off. Personally, I tweet as me with my real name, and anybody can get at me in all sorts of different ways. My email, I'm afraid, is on, is easily available, and people write to me. And part of me thinks, well, I don't like anonymity much here. The people who defend anonymity do it for good reasons. That if you want to be a whistleblower in a big organisation, you can't be a whistleblower under your own name, you'll lose your job. But those are the kind of things that we've got to get our heads round. At the moment, it does seem too much of a free-for-all without any recourse. When people say things, you have no... anonymously, you can tweet back, but you can't get back at them. You can't say that wasn't true. I mean, you might say that, but you're kind of crying out to the wind.
Exactly. That's the sad part about it.
Completely.
Yeah.
Going back to women and power, you start the book with a reference way back to the Odyssey and Penelope and being silenced by her son, Telemachus.
Yes.
And I was just wondering that this culture of misogyny that's been perpetuated since and from ancient times, and in a lot of Greek tragedies, more than ever, what we read, and we see this happening, where, you just celebrate the role of the woman, so to say, as either fodder for barter, or, say, for instance, to be fought over, especially written by Homer. So what do you make of that? I mean, because the only reason I mentioned it is because you brought it up in your preface.
And I brought it up in the preface because I wanted people to see that this isn't just our problem. I mean, it's very easy to have very short-term memory, and I don't want to blame the Greeks for it. You know, I think that this kind of misogynistic way of thinking is you know, deeply embedded in how people describe the world, how they describe the differences between men and women, and it's embedded in the pictures that we see and all the rest. I mean, it's not just in literature. I mean, I think why the Greeks are a good place to start is not just because they're a very, very clear example of the ancient roots of this.
Yeah, sure.
But to some extent, they also start to wonder about it. And, you know, there are no feminist regimes in the ancient world. Neither the Greeks and Romans, you know, were remotely feminist in anything that we say, in any sense.
Well, they were the Amazons.
But the Amazons, what were they for? To be defeated, right? You know?
It's very,
the Amazons are there so that the Greek men, you know, can defeat them.
I wanted to deviate a little bit and talk about your other works as well. And you're a modern historian of the ancient times, so to speak. Your works on Pompeii, on Rome, are both educative and entertaining. I wanted to know, growing up, who were your classical heroes?
You mean heroes from the ancient world?
And authors.
And authors. Oh, well, modern authors is very easy, because, you know, although I feel a bit embarrassed about it now, I mean, I think one of the things that most of all turned me onto the classical world was watching the BBC, it must have been the early 70s, the BBC series of iClaudius, Robert Graves'.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yes.
You know, and it was glamorous and sordid and corrupt.
I love the grandmother.
It was
Claudius's grandmother.
Yeah, you know, and somehow, you know, although now I would want to kind of shoot, you know, holes into the whole enterprise, it somehow made me think that this was about, you know, the ancient world was about thinking about power and corruption. You know, not just about legions marching across various benighted places in the world. It wasn't just about genocide. It was about thinking about how power operated. And so I think, I'd like to say Robert Graves, but I think even more the television series.
Yeah, completely.
Yes, and actually when I saw the TV programs before I read the book, and I have to say I thought, I still do actually, the TV series was better, even though it's a terrible thing to say.
No judgment there.
No, none at all. You know, a lot of writers today, like Pat Barker has written The Silence of the Girls, and Madeline Miller has written Circe. What do you think of that? What do you think of these texts?
I think they're extremely interesting. I think that, you know, particularly women coming in and saying, let's tell the story our way, is, what's not to like? And I think it's fun and it revivifies ancient stories. I think we tend to kind of convince ourselves a bit too easily that this is entirely new. You know, and I think that women writers have engaged with antiquity, both in fiction and fact, for a very long time. I mean, I think, you know, it's now terribly old-fashioned, but Marguerite Yourcenar's Memoirs of Hadrian, I don't know, that was not exactly a female perspective, but it was a gay perspective.
Yes.
And similarly, so was Mary Renault. And, you know, her book, The Last of the Wine, and Mary Renault was gay, her book, The Last of the Wine, about 5th century Athens, was the first thing I read that actually made me think that maybe all this stuff about love between men was literal. You know, this was not just a metaphor. And so writers and women writers have been exploring this for quite a long time. And I think, you know, one of the nice things about the ancient world is that, of course, you know, we think we're rediscovering it for ourselves, and in a sense we are, but it doesn't mean we're entirely new.
Fair enough. Okay, so unfortunately, we've come to the last question, and I want to ask you something completely different. What do you do for fun? Do you have any guilty pleasure reads or any binge watches you do or long walks you take?
Do you know, that's a really difficult question. But, let me give you the absolutely true answer. That when I get home later at night after, damn hard day, I pour myself a couple of really nice glasses of red wine and put on the radio news. And how middle-aged is that?
That's the best. I think some of us are already doing that. So
or keep at it.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure and very, very educative session for us. So thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe to Books on Toast. And keep reading, and please read Mary Beard's works. It'll really open your eyes up.